because this is for posterity. Nobody else is doing this, I think, and someday our children's children's children may want to see what we got together and talked about with regard to our family. So on and off today, please don't let it be distracting. I'm just going to pipe in when I think, oh, there's a good tidbit, okay?
Hi, I'm Herb McLain. This is
LaFern, McLain, Stivers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to talk about a story about someone living in Indian Creek that made it big in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to tell us the story about how he came to acquire a piece of paper?
All right. This is the story of my great-grandfather, John A. McLain. Now, he knew exactly what he wanted to do with his life. He knew what farm he wanted. He knew how much it would cost to build a home. He knew the woman he wanted to marry. And he knew what furniture they would have to have. So he made all these arrangements before he took off for California. And his whole goal was to strike gold, to get enough gold that it would accomplish all of his goals. Well, in order to do this, he had to arrange with his dad to make sure that he got his inheritance ahead of time. So he started off with his horse and all these gold. He got to California, but he had to walk from St. Joe on because his horse was lame. So talk about dedication. He knew what he wanted, and like the McLains, he was going to stay with it with tenacity until he got it. He did go to California. He got the partnership with another man, and lo and behold, they did strike gold. But according to his wishes, he had the gold assayed to where it came out the amount that he needed and to buy a horse and to get back to what he really wanted in the Indian Creek area. He managed all that, came home, heard later on that the gold mine really did strike it rich, but he'd already accomplished his goals. And so the house was built, he married his gal, and I hope lived happily ever after.
So now a few little tidbits to go in between the short story that you just told. How did he get the gold strike claim? Did his father pay for it, or did he pay for it? And how did he get it? Do you know?
I have no idea. I've
So
tried to research that,
Yeah.
but I can't find that out.
Okay, then the next question is when he got to St. Joe, he contracted on the wagon train and repaired the wagons as they broke down along the way in
Yes,
order
I
to
think
pay
that's true.
to
That's
pay
true.
for his passage.
That's true.
So
And
because
he had arranged to meet the wagon train there
at St. Joe.
at St. Joe.
Yeah.
And so that was all established ahead of time.
Yeah, even today, this is as far as the Buffalo Bill Rodeo comes east,
Yeah.
is St. Joe, Missouri. That's where the
Yeah.
biggest, and when I was with my uncle, we rode in the rodeo there
Oh,
at St. Joe. So how ironic is that?
yeah.
So going out west, coming back, all the people that struck it rich there, I wonder how he got the money back to Missouri because there were so many marauders along the way on that trail.
All right. Now, there's another side story to this
Yeah.
that I had kind of forgotten. This is from Chester Smith, from one of his ancestors, the
Yeah.
man who had the Bible.
Yeah,
And he said that he had heard that John A. McLain, on his way home, stopped at an inn to get fed and sleep for the night. And for some reason, he woke up around midnight and some inner spirit told him, get the heck out of here. So he hopped on his horse and headed back toward Missouri. And he found out, according to Chester, and I have no validation for
Yeah.
this, but according to Chester, he found out that what they were doing at this inn was killing the people who had come there
yeah,
and getting their money away from them and burying their bodies in the back of the building.
Yeah.
And he was fortunate enough, he fell that he got out of here, but I can't validate that. I
That
don't
was
know.
a very big business back then.
Evidently it was.
Yeah, so that's how a lot of people got rich without doing the labor.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
and then he came back and built. Is the house still standing today?
No, he built a little house across the road near the creek,
Yeah.
and then later on, they built the big house, kind of an antebellum home, and that's where they were when the Trail of Tears came through.
Mm-hmm.
And during the Trail of Tears, one of the Indian braves came over there, and well, actually there were two of them, but one of them lived only a short period of time, and the other one, for some way they communicated, and he kept that Indian brave there. He built him a little hut, and the Indian brave had all of his meals at the outside of their home, but he wouldn't go inside, but he would crouch outside their back door, Indian fashion, and they fed him all of his meals, and he helped my great-grandfather on the farm, and lived there as long as he lived. And I know that when I used to follow along behind my cousin when he plowed, that there were 2 mounds there on that field that he was never allowed to plow over.
So that's where they were buried.
That's where they were buried. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that story
Yeah.
very well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it makes you wonder what kind of Indians were, because earlier they were mostly Shawnee when we first got there, but after the Trail of Tears, there was a lot of Cherokee there
Yeah,
too.
there were. Yeah.
And then,
well, now you do know that I'm sure that Jackie has the story about David D. when he first came here, about the Indians and the
buying
protection.
the property.
Yeah, the protection. Yeah.
Yeah.
8 cents an acre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a 15-year-old squaw.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
What a deal, huh?
Yeah, what a deal. Yeah. And then he baptized the baby in the Indian Creek, right there near the spring, as I understand it.
And the tribe would take the children back.
Yeah.
He wasn't allowed to keep them.
That's right. They kept the kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank her.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
very much.
certainly welcome.
Wasn't that fun?
A piece of history.
What?
Does
Yeah,
anybody
Chucky.
here have a different story than he has?
Well, mine is just one man. It
One
was
man?
just one man. That
Yeah.
they came after this one man who had different meanings.
And as I recall, he was Confederate, but I'm not sure that's correct. But that he was a Confederate, and the Bushwhackers, Cantrell's Raiders, came after him, and then he was I think they took him to the church, as I understand it, and told him to pray for his life, and they killed him there. And then either Betsy or Susan, and I've heard both ways, came and administered to him all night long until he finally died.
Do we know who Betsy or Susan was?
She was either David D's wife or John A's wife. And if she was David D's wife, it stands more to reason with the time period. Wait a minute, does it? Because
Charles was born the day Jesse James was killed.
okay, well then
His father,
it probably
David,
was
born the same day that Jesse James was born. So.
Well, I believe that it must have been John A's wife, because they named all their children after Confederate people. Like my grandfather's name was Jefferson Davis, and they had George Price, and every one of their children is named after, there was a Robert E. Lee. So it stands to reason because of the time period.
We even have a Missouri. A name Missouri.
That's right, we did. And so it seems to reason that it would probably be his wife who would administer to the man in
his
church
wife
because
was
of the time.
Confederate leanings too.
Well, I don't know that.
We don't
but
know
I
that,
would
but it
imagine
sounds-
that.
James boys used to stay at somebody's house.
Oh,
on their
they
way
did?
on the way to Kentucky to their
Oh.
family.
Yeah.
Because that's the Greens Ferry Road. That's where
Yeah.
everybody traveled
Yeah.
through our town.
Yeah.
And then would get the ferry and
Yeah.
then go on down into
Mhm.
Kentucky into their
Yeah.
families. So the James used to stay here.
Yeah. In October of 1929, my uncle was killed in a quarry accident. And it was, I mean, shocking to all of us because it was instantaneous. My grandmother was taking care of me, Jefferson Davis's wife, and I was an infant. I had been born in 1928. When he went over to tell his wife about the death of their son-in-law, he was afraid that she was so excitable that she might throw me, the baby, in the air because she loved her son-in-law. And so he took me away from her to tell her about the accident that had occurred. And as he was telling her, he laid me down on the chair and had a heart attack and died. So they had two deaths on the same day. My father, who had been the youngest member of that family, the youngest male member, was suddenly the poor guy where all of this had fallen on his shoulders. You know, the farm, his store, my grandmother, his home. And then to make bad matters worse, that was when the Depression hit and they lost all of their money in the Sturtevant Bank here. So he went from being the pampered young man of the family to trying to hold it all together. And my mom tells about the two funerals, that it was really something that of course they didn't have them in funeral homes then. And so they had the two caskets over at my grandmother's house. And my grandmother's house was right next to ours in the country. And then everyone stayed at our house. But it was quite a dilemma.
And so where did this take place?
This took place out at Oriole, Missouri.
Oriole.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So this person is the other person that died. He
That's right.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
That
Did
was
you
my
live
grandfather.
in the store or next to the store?
There was the store, and then there was my grandmother's house, which is still standing.
Uh-huh.
And then there was our house, which is well, it's still standing too, but the store has burned.
Now, if we can go by, probably we won't have time today, but if we could get that address, it would be wonderful to put that picture also on this movie.
I have a picture of the old store in here someplace in this stuff. And look, I want